Story 1. I'm a former Brazilian Marine, and I'd like to report a well-known story among the Marines about the disappearance of a sergeant on an island where we usually conduct military training once a year. The Ilha of Maria Maramba Island is an island that during the time when Brazil was still an empire was refuge of slaves who fled the farms and gathered in communities in the most isolated parts of the island. These people are known as Quas, and to this day they still survive on the island through hunting and fishing. At one of these military trainings that takes place every year, a newly graduated sergeant made friends with one of the Quas who lived there in the region. During some conversations with the Quola, he told Sergeant Ricardo about an ancient story of an old hidden treasure that's inside of a cave on one of the isolated areas of the island. This old treasure was hidden there by a group of thieves who shipwrecked on the island many years ago during the time when Brazil was still an empire. However, he told Sergeant Ricardo that he should not enter the cave because any Columa that had already entered into it never returned again. So it was known to be inhabited by a spirit who protected the treasure from outsiders. Ricardo was skeptical and did not believe much in spirits, so he asked for the Quala to show him where the cave was. He refused to show him the cave entrance because he said that it was very dangerous. Ricardo didn't insist and decided to forget that story and just focus on the military training years past. And Ricardo didn't forget the story of the treasure on the island. He was thinking about how his life would change if he managed to find that treasure. The life of a Marine in Brazil was very tough and the salary was low, so he dreamed of getting out of the Marine Corps one day and starting his own business, and that treasure could help him with that. So he decided that the next time he went to attend military training on the Maria Island, he would insist that the Quola show him where the cave entrance is, even if he had to offer him money to show him the way. So after a few months, Sergeant Ricardo became aware that he would be chosen to be part of the next training group on the island, so that would be his chance to change his life, and he would not let that escape. Arriving on the island, he attended the usual training drills and waited until it was his day off, which would be a day when he wouldn't have to train and he would have more time to explore the cave. He waited for dawn to go to the Columba's place without anyone from his squad seeing him, since exploration of the island by the military was prohibited by the officers, as there have been cases of military disappearing in previous training groups. And then he asked one of the Quas to show him the way to the cave. Before he went to the Qua, Ricardo invited a close friend to go with him to help him find the treasure. This close friend is the person who spread the story that you're hearing. He said that if they found the treasure he would share it with him. The sergeant's friend refused to go because he said it was very dangerous and advised him not to go there either. He ignored his friend's advice and decided to go there anyway. After finding one of the Quas and insisting that he showed him the way, he agreed and took Ricardo to the entrance of the cave, where the sergeant entered in search of the treasure that could change his life. The next day, the sergeant's friend noticed that he had not returned from his search in the cave and told the officers what had happened. Search teams were requested, and it took about a week to find the entrance to the cave where the sergeant entered. After conducting searches inside the cave, they found Sergeant Ricardo's dead body. It was believed that he was lost and could not find the exit, or was possibly bit by a snake. It is said that the Marine Corps compensated the sergeant's family and hid the case from the public so that it did not appear in any newspapers. I don't know if that really happened or not, but it's a very common story in the Marine Corps that's often told by older Marines. It said that this story happened in the early 1990s, so I think at the time it was not very difficult to hide this kind of story from the media. This happened a couple of years ago too. Story 2. Myself and 2 other friends, we were probably 17 at the time. It was summer, and we had plans to go to our friend's house. There's this park that is halfway from mine and hers, so my friends and I decided it could be nice to sit in this hut in the park and have a smoke on the way to our friends. This was in the evening, so it was getting dark already, and as time passed it was dark enough for the streetlights to turn on. It's important for the story to explain a bit how the hut was situated in the park. The park was shaped like a big circle around a lake, so the hut we sat at had 2 entrances from the left and right side. These entrances then connected to the main park path. The hut is open and just has bench seats in a circle and a roof, but open air, if that makes any sense. Anyways, the streetlights on the right side were not working, so it was extremely dark on that side. My friends and I are chatting away and people are walking past like normal, nothing strange. Then this man comes from the left and is walking really slowly. Now normally this wouldn't catch my attention, but it's the summer, remember, and he had on a long thick trench coat with a top hat that had a feather in it and had sunglasses on. He walked really slowly into the dark and just stood there surrounded in it. I could only make out his silhouette just standing there. At this point all of my friends are quiet as well and we're feeling uneasy as we're all girls. Then the man begins to walk back towards the street light that has light on the left side. He stands there for a couple of seconds staring again, then he proceeded to walk slowly down the path to the hut. Still staring at us. We thought maybe he would just walk through and wanted to scare us, but no, he then sits down in front of us and begins to talk. For context, we live in Brussels, so he started speaking French and said, "What a lovely evening, ladies. We speak and understand French," but in that moment we knew it was smarter to pretend we didn't, so we just say sorry English. You can see him get agitated and mad. He starts going on this whole rant about how we should speak the language of the country. Stupid English people think they're better than everyone else. As I said, he was quite mad. While saying this, I began saying to my friends, we should probably leave now. Our friend is expecting us at our house soon, since my other friends were so scared. To the minute I said that, they said yes and started to walk the path to the main park path, but they left their backs and everything. I had to call back to them like, guys, your bags, and they came running back, and while we're quickly gathering our things, he just stares at us. We collect our things and start walking when suddenly we hear, "Hey, hey, come back here." We turn around and see him holding up the can of Coke my friend had left, and he said we should not litter and to come back and throw it away. We began to run at this point and did not look back the whole way to my friend's house. We were so creeped out and scared that we thought he would follow us or something, and any person who walked behind us caused us to panic. What scared us the most was that he had his hands in his pocket the entire time, and the moment he held up the Coke can, there was something else in his hand that shined with a street light that none of us could make out, but we assumed with the shape of the object, the way the light shined on it, his behavior, and his hand in his pocket the whole time, as well as calling for us to come back, that he held a knife. We haven't seen that man since, and all of us refused to go around that area at night. Now it really scared us. I know this story might not be as creepy of an encounter as others, but this has stuck with me and my friends for a while. We have named him the Hatman. We're not sure what that man would have done if we'd stayed any longer or had come back to throw the can out, but I'm glad we didn't find out. Be safe out there. You never know people's intentions. I live in Denver, Colorado, and I'm a sex worker. Last year a girl went Story 3 missing in Thornton, Colorado, and was shot to death. This year, a few months ago, another girl went missing and was found stabbed to death, and now a girl my friend is close with has been missing since last week, and we still haven't heard from her. They are all sex workers, and I'm starting to worry that this girl could be dead because of the other two. I've contacted the police already, but nothing's been done, and they still have no suspect for the shooting in Thornton. Could it be a serial killer, or am I just overthinking it? November of last year, the first girl went missing for a few days and was found dead. Then in February, another one of our girls was found stabbed. She went missing for almost a week before she was found last week. Another girl went missing and we still haven't heard from her at all, and we have no idea if she's safe or not. We strictly work in Denver and refuse to go out of a certain vicinity. The girls are all in their 20s and they had brown hair, and the girl who's currently missing has brown hair with 2 blonde streaks in the front. We also know to be aware of who we get into cars with or meet up with. My friend and I went to the police when the third girl went missing and mentioned the other murders so they could see if it's connected at all and that it's urgent and she needs to be found. My friend sent a message saying someone was following her, and we don't know if it's related or not, but she sent a description of the guy following her. He was tallish, had brown hair, but was styled clean-shaven and was wearing a Story 4 suit. To give some background information, I run a pod simply for fun or to bring awareness to the dangers of the world and people around us, but learning about weird occurrences and true crime has made me more wary of people and behavior I'm usually really good at chopping occurrences as just people being people, but I do work in an area for sketchy behavior, drugs, abductions, and stuff like that. That being said, this happened while I was working the store alone. We have cameras, and I'm a fairly big person. I'm 6't and a heavyweight. Athlete, I'm also female, though you couldn't really see that due to the amount of layers I was wearing, around 12. My friend Alice came to keep me company and sat behind a trash can we have in the corner of the store next to a heater. A man pulls up in a black Lexus and is making wide-eyed eye contact with me the entire time. It kind of made me uncomfortable, but with my size and appearance, I'm used to men gawking at me. He kept up this staring for a couple of minutes, and then the short man slinked out of his car, I say welcome in, which was met with him swiftly starting to walk around, and behind the counter where I work I was cutting an avocado for lunch and had a knife in my hand. I got a very strange feeling and told him sternly, if you need anything I can help you over there, you cannot be back here. Alice looked up and coughed. The man whipped around looking at Alice and briefly said, I don't need anything, and speed walks out. That left Alice and I with a terrible feeling, so Alice eventually leaves and I sit down and study on my break, where we're pretty dead for at least the next hour usually. These three teens around my age, probably a year younger, come in. The one that started talking to me was visibly sweating and shaking with nerves, which was strange because it was freezing outside, like you could throw water and it would turn to ice cold. Thinking nothing of it, I asked what I could get them. He blurts out, can you give me an Uber? I said I can order you one, which was met with, no, I have cash, can you give me an Uber home? And I said no, I can't leave the door, and I was absolutely not going to be driving strangers to God knows where. He points at a phone and a charger his friend was holding, and I said there's an outlet over there they can use. He went to plug it in by my computer, which I said, hey man, use the one over. He walked all the way to the back to get right next to my stuff, which was a little weird, but whatever. The girl with the two guys pipes up as soon as they sat down, now, no, you can't say that, you'd weird her out, while the other guy said just go and ask her. They then continued to whisper something about there being plans, and you know I'm always happy to help, but I started feeling uneasy. Then they stand up, and I kid you not, just 5 minutes after they sat down they just get up and leave and say bye, thanks for the help. And the guy who asked for the Uber pulls his keys out of his pocket, and they continued to get into the car that's been parked in front of the store the entire time. It was a very uncomfortable feeling. Luckily, my manager came in shortly afterwards. It was all fairly Story 5. Strange, so I decided to stay in a Motel 6 for one night in the southern New Hampshire area. I had back-to-back hospital shifts, so it wasn't worth it to drive 45 minutes back home just to do it again. 6 hours later, I checked in at around 11:15 p.m. and went to my room. Of course, the door refused to open, and the key ended up snapping in half, probably because it was 10 degrees out, so I had to go back to the office to change rooms and get a new card. My new room actually did open. It was pretty clean overall. I didn't see any major issues with it. I tried to get some sleep, but I wake up at about 4 a.m. to people arguing somewhere in the hotel. I genuinely didn't think it was possible to be so unbelievably loud between two people. This argument went on for what seemed like forever until they finally shut the up. However, about 15 minutes later, I hear someone trying to force their way into my room. I had both locked and latched the door, yet the door somehow was cracked open, and the latch was definitely about to give out. It would have opened fully if I didn't say get the out between the cracks. I just saw a dark figure in maybe a hoodie or jacket. The instant I said that, the door closed and the person seemingly left. Now, I would have opened the door and confronted them, but I did not have my weapon on me at the time. I genuinely have no idea what could have happened if I was fully asleep and didn't hear them open the door. First and last time ever staying at a Motel 6, for the love of God. No matter how much money you're saving by staying at a Motel 6, please just stay at a regular hotel. I promise you it's worth it. I'm 40 years old now, so this actually occurred about 26 to 27 years ago. Story 6. Gone to the mall with my mother, and being the cool and independent little that I was, I didn't want to walk around with my mom. I was about 13 to 14 years old, so my mom agreed to let me wander the mall and meet her at the department store in 1 hour. Usually I would go window shopping or go into Spencer's Gifts to look at all the dorky stuff that teenagers liked back in the day. When the hour came up, I walked to the agreed upon meeting spot to wait for my mom. I must have been in there for not 3 minutes when an older man came up to me and attempted to strike up a conversation. My parents had always warned my brother and I about the whole stranger danger situations and whatnot. However, the man seemed harmless. He started telling me that I was a beautiful young lady He then tried to convince me to go with him to his car, because he supposedly had a camera there and all he wanted to do was to take a quick picture of me to submit to an agency. This whole time I began to feel like I was having an out-of-body experience. All I kept doing was giggling nervously and telling him no. He became a bit more adamant about getting me to follow him to the point where he started nudging my arm and pulling me so I could go outside and take this picture. Finally, as quickly as this bizarre event began, it ended. An older lady came up to us and asked him, "Do you know this girl?" The man became visibly uncomfortable and the lady told him to off. He quickly shuffled away and she looked me square in the eyes and asked me if I was okay. In hindsight, I really don't think I knew what could have happened had I followed this creep to his vehicle. All I did was tell the lady that I was fine as I walked away to finally find my mother. Looking back, I'm so grateful for that lady. I'm not one to act like a drama queen or even a person who overreacts to certain situations. However, I believe that this woman may have saved my life. I will never in my life forget her or that experience. My junior year of college, 5 friends and I rented a dumpy Story 7. 3-story off-campus house. The place was old and huge, so there was always unexplained noises, and it was generally creepy to stay there alone. Anyway, one weekend in January, all of my roommates were heading out of town, so I was staying there alone. The worst part of this was that during this time there had been a string of break-ins and robberies in the area around where we lived. 2 people had been killed, another person was shot in a separate break-in, and if I remember right, some people had been held at gunpoint for a few hours as well. All of these break-ins occurred within a 10-block radius of our house. Needless to say, I was a little paranoid about staying there alone for the weekend, but I was able to find a little hatchet in the house that would at least provide me some protection. That Friday night, I went out with some friends, had a few beers, and got home to an empty house around midnight. I stayed up a bit longer watching TV and passed out on the couch with my contacts in and with a hatchet close by on the coffee table. I'm not sure how long I was asleep for, but I woke up to the sound of someone jostling the front door handle. The couch I was sleeping on was only about 10 feet from the door. I laid there listening to the front door knob being turned, and I couldn't move. I was so terrified. Then the jostling stopped and I heard footsteps walking off of the porch and away from the house. Still scared but able to move, I grabbed my hatchet and mindlessly stared at the TV, trying to calm down. Then I heard footsteps come up the porch to the door. I brought my hatchet into a throwing position, the deadbolt on the door to turned, and the door opened and someone walked in. Just as I was about to throw the hatchet and run in the opposite direction, I realized it was one of my roommates. Apparently his weekend plans changed and he was staying in town for the weekend. He'd been out partying, lost his house key, and remembered we had a backup key hidden along the side of the house. Once he opened the door, I was standing there with a murderous look in my eyes and a hatchet in my hands about to be thrown. I'm pretty sure he was as scared as me. 15 years later, I can still remember that feeling of sheer terror when I heard someone at the door. I'm also thankful that I'd fallen asleep with my contacts in that night, because without those I would not have recognized the intruder. I would have thrown the hatchet at full velocity towards my roommate. Okay, so I worked night shift in a maximum security psychiatric hospital, as you can. Story 8. Probably imagine these kind of experiences come with the territory to set the scene for you. The hospital I work at was built in the 50s as an asylum. The concrete walls are cold and sounds echo throughout with relative ease. The pressure differentials between units in the main hall create a haunting howling sound as the air escapes through the cracks under the doors. We typically keep the lights out to encourage patients to sleep through the night, and then there's me walking the halls alone to check that everyone is still breathing. I've heard people laughing to themselves, whispering conversations to someone unseen by me. I've even ran to emergencies where other patients have snuck into another's room to beat them violently, having to pull a 300+ PB man off of another man that he attacked in his sleep, all the while he's still stomping on his head. But the scariest thing was when I was doing a round and I came across one of our blind patients. You know how in the movies you see people with hallucinations that cut their eyes out looking a relief? No, I didn't find a pair of peepers freshly gouged out, if that's what you were thinking. However, this patient had in fact done exactly this a number of years ago, and as a result was completely blind. The worst part is it didn't make the hallucinations go away. Now all he can See are the haunting visions that brought him to it in the first place. So, this P patient had been with us for some time, and every night I walk by his room he's in the same position, standing facing the wall with his back to the door. No matter how long I stand there, he doesn't move. This is nothing new though, as I've seen a number of patients with catatonia. Before, they just stand or sit there with a blank or sometimes fearful expression and react to nothing. So the scariest part for me was when I passed by his room walking quietly so as not to wake any patients, and I peek into his room. Through the window he's standing there facing the wall. Just before I'm about to continue on with my rounds, I see his head to like he heard a voice. He turns around with his empty eye sockets and looks at me. Sarah, is that you? I nearly myself. I didn't even know this patient knew my name, let alone that he could tell somehow that it was me standing there. I probably should have reassured him that I was real, but in that moment I was so scared I just kept on. Story 9. Walking around 2:06-ish, I was driving flatbed, picked up a load of construction material in rural Tennessee. My memory is foggy now, but I want to say between Memphis and Nashville, but closer to the intersection of the Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee state lines. A tarp was required, so I strapped everything down, tarped the load, and left the shipper about 5 miles down the road in the middle of nowhere in woods on a second lane road. I noticed my tarp flapping in the wind. I found a white shoulder and pulled over to fix it. I realized that I flat just did a shitty job tarping this load and decide to redo it on the side of the road. I undo all the bungee straps, drag the tarps off, roll them back up, climb up on the ladder, and start and rolling the tarps again, and I see a guy walking down the same side of the road I'm on coming towards my truck. I don't think anything about it other than to keep an eye on it because I'm in the middle of nowhere, and I continue what I'm doing. About the time I have the tarp set in place and I'm climbing down to start hooking the bungee straps back on, this guy's getting close enough that I'm now paying more attention to him than I am to tarping my load. I grabbed my winch bar and set it on the trailer where I'm working just in case the guy gets to me, and the first thing I notice is his hair. It's like a mullet, but it's patchy as hell. It was like he tried to cut his own hair and had a seizure in the process, and said it good enough to party. The next thing I noticed were his eyes, which I can only describe as off, like they were clear. I didn't think he was drunk or high or anything. They did also gave me the distinct impression that the elevator didn't go all the way up. His clothes were dirty and not well maintained, with dirty white tennis shoes. I remember he didn't have any laces on one shoe, and the tongue was noticeably out of place. He stops by me, waits till I acknowledge him, and just says, "I've got a long walk." I'm like, "Yeah man, you do. We're in the middle of nowhere," making it clear there's no right to be had here. He nods, starts walking by me, continuing on his way, stops at about the driver door on my truck, and turns around. He comes back to me and repeats himself, "I've got a long walk." At this point I explain to him that I can't give him a ride insurance, and all that I apologize for not being able to help him out, and he seems to accept this, turns around and leaves. I wait for him to get a little ways away from my truck and start working on finishing the tarp job. I still keep an eye on it, and he's moving away from me as I'm putting on the last of the bungee straps. I look over to check where he's at, and he's turned around heading back towards me now, about 100 yards in front of my truck, and coming back my way. It looks like he's talking on a cell phone. He has his hand up to his face, and I can barely make out his moving mouth, his other hand waving like he's having a conversation with someone. I finish with the straps, grab my winch bar, and I'm climbing into my truck as he's about 10 yards away now. As soon as I'm in the cab, I lock the doors. I set the winch bar on the passenger seat just in case. I look at the gun and realize he's not talking on a phone, he's talking to his hand, and now I'm nervous because he doesn't look like he's having a nice pleasant chat. It looks more like an angry conversation. I crank the truck up, put it into gear, and just pull out. I didn't look for traffic or anything. As I pass him, he's just looking at me, still holding his hand to his face with this dead-ass look on it, just staring at me. It gave me the creeps. About the time I hit 5th or 6th gear, I look in the mirror and there's no one there. This took place around 15 years ago. I would have been about 13 years old. Story 10. My dad has always taken an annual fishing trip with friends that would put him out of state for about a week. I have numerous stories about weird things happening while he was gone on set fishing trips, from paranormal events to Someone attempting to break into our house, but this one is the most unnerving to people when I tell it. When my dad would go on these trips, I would usually sleep in my parents' bed. My mom and I treated it like a little sleepover and would watch movies, stay up and gossip. Even on school nights, I remember falling asleep after a late-night movie and being roused from sleep what felt like just minutes later. My mom is a light sleeper, while on the other hand, it takes a catastrophic level event to wake me up from a dead sleep. I remember waking up feeling as if something was wrong. The room was illuminated oddly, and there was a distant rhythm I was only partially aware of. I'm half asleep, and as I open my eyes, I can see my mom on top of the bed on her knees, peering out of the window above her bed. I started to ask, "What's going on?" when she turned to me quickly and shushed me. I quietly joined her, looking out of the small box window that was slightly cracked open, and the distant rhythmic chanting became more and more clear. Our house sat in front of a strip of woods. The trees aren't too thick, and you can't see through most of the wooded area. The chanting was getting louder by the second, and the odd illuminations finally made sense. You could see a line of hooded figures in dark clothes, holding torches, marching east, chanting what sounded like demonic dark things. It felt surreal and scary as we held our breath, waiting to see what they would do. Were they headed towards the houses to burn them down? Were they going to attempt to break in and sacrifice us? It felt like ages that we sat there watching this line of people walk through the woods, their torches raised high and their chanting continuing through the night. But that was it. They just walked away. After what was probably more like 2 minutes, my mom and I laid back down and discussed what we saw. Trying to get back to sleep, we told my dad first thing in the morning when he called to check in. But I remember him not believing us. He thought it had to be a dream or something. That kind of thing didn't happen in our small town in Ohio. But the next day there was an article in the local newspaper about a lamb being slain on a makeshift altar on the east side of my town. My dad stopped doubting us, and my mom and I got even more freaked out. My parents still live in that house, and we've never seen any other cult-like behavior in the area, but that one evening freaked us out enough that I decided to permanently camp out in my parents' bedroom every time my dad left town until my late high school years. If you stuck around, I appreciate it. Thanks for listening and allowing me to get my story out there. My friends and I were reminiscing about creepy stories this weekend. This one came up and I haven't stopped thinking about it since, so I wanted to write it down and share. I'm a 17-year-old female working as a cashier at a popular thrift store. Story 11. I've been there for approximately 8 months and I love my job and my coworkers. The common thing I've noticed is that unfortunately, any time a new younger female cashier starts working, she will be hit on by plenty of older guys, and I was no exception to that. I've never had to deal with creepy or weird customers until this job, and I worked in the food industry before, so maybe that's why we of course get a handful of regulars. And while I've had a few creepy older guys hit on me before, there's a regular that comes in all the time. I want to say he's in his late 40s, and while he's always nice, my manager pointed out his obsession with me. I was called in the office the other day so he could show me how he acts and such with Sir Vanet's cameras. Here's a list of what's been pointed out to me that I didn't really notice before. He comes in at roughly the same time I'm working every day and apparently doesn't show up on my days off. I work closing most of the time, so he comes in around 6 p.m. When he comes in, he will immediately look at the register I almost always work at and will do a double take looking for me. He usually buys one item, spending about 15 minutes in the store. Usually my manager is pointed out that he needs to buy something or else he knows it'll look weird. Every time without fail, he will go to my register, and even when I was on the floor doing recovery, he'll ask me to check him out because I'm his favorite cashier. If there's a shorter line, it doesn't matter. You will stay at my register waiting and watching me. He lingers around after buying something just to talk to me, showing me things on his phone, making sure there's no one else in line. My manager said he approaches me when I'm alone so he can talk to me without holding up a line. He's commented on my hickeys that I failed to cover up before on my neck, making weird remarks here and there. He says he usually checks because there's always about one or two. He said I wouldn't look good as a blonde, which isn't inherently weird, but paired with everything else I guess it is. When I wasn't wearing any makeup, he would say something like, "You seem out of sorts." Recently I started wearing makeup again and he's commented saying he likes that I'm back to my old self. I've Noticed weird flirty remarks with him, but I always brush it off because customers are always kind of weird and I deal with that often anyway. He'll lean over the register counter to talk to me closer, just his body language in general. He does a double take when he leaves too, keeping his eyes on me. I think it's possible he knows what car I drive. He was at my work this morning, even though I always do closes. I've asked my boyfriend who works with me if it's true that he never shows up when I'm off. He said yes, it's true. I don't think he knows my schedule, but he might know my car and see it in the parking lot. He always parks out of the store outdoor camera view, so I still don't know what car he drives. The general manager was made aware by the manager, but the creep didn't interact with me much today because I was never alone at the register or on the floor. I was training a new cashier today. He was there a lot longer than usual, I'm assuming, because he was waiting for a time when I was alone and there were no customers. I think he gave up when he realized I would be training for the majority of my shift, and seeing how busy it was since I worked opening yesterday, he came in before my shift at work, probably assuming I would be opening again. I'm working closing tonight. Apparently he came in earlier and saw the new cashier, so we actually ended up asking one of them new cashier who quit, probably thinking I quit. It's only 4:33. He usually comes in around 600 if I'm closing. I'm just waiting to see if he shows up for the second time today. I doubt he will, since he might think I don't work today. My manager and I are going to keep a log of what time he comes in and leaves. I'm going to keep his phone number saved in my notes so I can look him up and hopefully find his name and other information. I will possibly keep my phone on the counter to voice record what he says. I wish I could record him in person, but it would be too obvious if I get shown more security footage. I will video that instead. Story 12. Growing up, we lived in the project. Our grandmother lived in the projects area, probably about a mile away from us. My younger brother and I went to take something to her, and then when we were on our way back home it had started getting dark. We decided to take a shortcut, which meant walking through a dirt road with a factory on the right and a wooded area on the left. There was almost no light into the area, so imagine an 11 to 12-year-old boy and his 9 to 10-year-old brother working up the courage to walk through the darkness to get to the main road. We started off walking quickly to make it through there, and I was pretty much holding my breath the entire time because I didn't want to make noise. I didn't want whatever was out there to hear us. Finally we made it out of the wooded dirt road and we turn right onto the sidewalk of the main road. We make it about 10 feet and suddenly we hear something behind us. I look back and my brother does too. We see someone come out of the same dirt road we just come out of. We turn around, my heart pounding, and I say to my brother, "There following us. We need to hurry up." We still had a way to go to get home, and the only streamlight that we could see was down the road. I say to my brother while holding his hand, "Walk fast." We hear the footsteps behind us start picking up speed as we are practically running. Once we notice this, I whisper, "We're going to run. Are you ready?" "Okay, ready, run." And I start running, almost dragging my brother behind me. It's probably all in my head, but I swear I hear the person behind us running too. We run past 2 cross streets and run up a little hill and make it to the traffic light. We stop and look back quickly. It's so dark we don't see anything. We still think we're in danger, so we run across the street and have one more street to cross, and the projects area would be in front of us. We run the remainder of the way home. We don't want to be told we can't go anywhere again, so we don't say anything about being frightened and running all the way home. Thinking back to that time, our imaginations probably got the best of us, or maybe we did escape. We'll never know. If you have a scary story you would like me to read in an upcoming video, this is one way to help me guarantee variety in the stories I share. You can email me or post it to my subreddit. I'll up the details in the video description. Thank you all for listening, and a special thanks to my patrons and channel members who now have early access to Adri videos as well as other behind-the-scenes content. Thank you to Dixie, Busby, Michelle, Green, Misty, Raku, Michelle Brooks, Lavina, Cordelia, Kirby Harris, Angie Lindop, Rebecca James, Mason Hayes, Chelsea Muffet, Lisa Apprentice Shell, and Kevin Amanda, Am Rebecca Morris, Yennefer, Jessica Leigh, Brock Ballard, Kim Thompson, Angela Reeves, Sher, AGI Nathan, Shadwick Nicholas, Johnson, Samantha Place, Cheryl Duckworth, Scoutum 405, Z Harris, Unlady, Likey 13, Ventura, California, Elizabeth Mays, Alexia Tuttle, Marshana Rainey, Wo Sapon, Mary Wright, Jessica Copperfield, Zoe D, Danielle Shaw, Jane Wiggins, Tara Harris Mary Rye Callie Townsend M. Deshawn. Edmondson Kimmy Lowe Wendy Maris Confessions of a Cleaner Megan Abrams. Miss Tycoon Stephen Sloan Christine Ina Myway Ashley Bray Tissa Felter Danielle. Tina Marie Heckman Amal Garner Lisa Ratford Deborah Malay Connie Sue T. Adwell Diana Johnston Vampy Debs Jasmine Davis Erica Air Fox Mulder Ram Beltran. Tina Nick Bosie Sarah C.H. Neil A.R. Tiara. Sanders Timothy Stratton Jennifer Jenkins Lloyd Rash Maribel Duna Michael. O.M. Ollie Marissa Kuro Amber Hops King Slim. Justin Beast Jespi Joy Dana J. Blee Anna. Stephanie McLaren Lumini Cami Skin Crawler Adara Bella Place 2006 Michelle. Welchman Dana B. Lisa McDonald Clar Scott Madison. C. Wasp Sting Jennifer J. Ashley Liliat. Lee T. Wyatt Gina Nora J.K. 6 Venzio Donna. Joey Big GSC Tanya Spaghetti Waolo King. Matthew October Gypsy Lisa Ollie Thomas Build With Me Letitia Fran. Devs Insomnic Cats Stephanie Summer. Rebecca Tyera This Bad Kitty Your Papy Dilly Laney Tripping Balls Through. History Samantha Erica Alyssa Tracy. Killian's Place April James R. Jen Joy. Handout Pegasus Genesis Karen Kitu V. Barry LJ Fiona Xbox Scott Pite Booty Monica. Level A Chris and Donna Holly Spry Kimber Jasmine Centix Heather Haven. Kitty Cat Luna 2 A DHD Aurora Janice. Cinderella Baby Borderline Betty Lady Draco Era Nicole Snowball Rena Melanie. The Honeybee 987 Pretty Girl 215 Ryan Brooke Wendy CFTY Cal Tina Dina. Vampy Debs Patricia Amber Krista Brenda. Absent Alice Chrissy K Spiders Web Ola. La Andrea Sue Monique Shaw Gorman Emma. Lisa Sigma Cube X Greg Chelsea Amanda. Jane Sam Zep Tay Sarah C Austin Tan Lilm. Jenny Gabrielle Fire 5 Sarah P James Gargano Gemma Allen. Monica Level A and Alex I hope you're doing well guys. I'll see you all on the next one.